Okay, y'all. The view count must rise, so I must become a toxic artist that totally steps out of his lane and bullies everyone. As such, I put out a call for art roasting submissions, where I will mercilessly tear into your art and be a big ol' meanie. Dookie. Poopy. Doo-doo. This stinks. What a poopy head thing to do. Okay, I'm obviously kidding. Rather, I'm gonna look at your art and give you some advice and tips. Granted, I'm not necessarily a pro or anything, but if you do like my art, which I'll scroll some alongside here, perhaps you'd like to pick up a thing or two from me. I feel the best way to improve is to pick up bits and pieces of all the various artists you like. You know, a bit of this artist here, a bit of that artist there, until it all kind of amalgamates into your own signature style. Anyway, let the roasting commence. Okay, so first up we have 4 submissions from Tropic. These are pretty nice pieces. I like the style. It's fun. So, first we gotta talk about this one about this character, Jackie. So, first thing I noticed was the lack of contrast. The purple background kind of blends in with the muted color palette of the characters, plus the characters' colors are completely flat. The typography is my wheelhouse, so you're in luck. My background is actually in graphic design. But first, let's make the background create better contrast. Since purple seems to be your favorite color in this piece, we'll consult the color wheel built in with every drawing program and see that green is the complementary color. So we'll use a more saturated one to push the characters forward. Also, the pattern in the background is pretty cool, but sometimes less is more. Next we gotta light this scene. Nothing exists with completely flat colors like this. What I've been doing lately is selecting the entire character and paint bucketing the color of the light I choose and erasing out the shadows. Now this is a more graphic approach. If you were going for a more painterly feel, you'd start by selecting the local value and building shadows and highlights off of that. But personally I like this style more. Now apply it to all the other characters. I also set the layer mode to overlay so it's not as harsh and adjust the opacity. Then I use a low opacity soft round eraser to mute the highlights where it would be darker. Next is typography. So this Jackie person seems important to the context of the story, so we need to talk about emphasis. When you design a typographic layout, you implement a focal point for it. Make the keyword bigger and short. So we're going to blow up Jackie here and make the colors more contrasting. Also, don't be afraid to put it over the artwork. I should also note that these antenna hair things you did kind of clash with the other characters and make the arm of the character behind her look kind of weird. I understand that's a character design thing, but in this context I'm not sure if you want it. Same with the other character. This is more of a personal preference and stylistic thing, so take it or leave it. So the key lesson here is contrast, lighting, and emphasis. On to the next piece. Once again, contrast. The background is far too muted. And again, same thing applies. Add lighting. Should know that these feet are looking a little jank, buddy. Like, I get it, feet are hard, but, you know, try to do some studies and understand the bone structure of feet. It's the same thing with any anatomy. Just study. Do your figure drawing, read your books, you know, do your homework. I tweak them a bit here, but I also struggle with feet. Like, feet are hard to draw. I think feet are actually way harder than hands to draw, honestly. Also, you can push your lighting even further with sharper highlights at the end of the highlights you put there. Once again, I'm using an overlay layer mode. This is mostly a stylistic thing. You might prefer just one layer of highlights, so, you know, that's just how I do it. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that piece, so on to the next one. Okay, so on to the next piece. You did add a note that this is a fan art of a character by Cara user Storm's Hollow. So there's that. Check out Storm's Hollow if you like this character. How about some fan art of my characters from Doomsayer, Anyway, I like this one a lot, but once again, I have to say it. Contrast. This one's a bit quick and dirty. Like, I could spend a bit of time like really adjusting the background, but the lighter your background is, the further it goes. When your foreground is darker, it's pushed forward. That's just atmospheric perspective. In this case, you'd want to saturate the background colors more. Like, don't be afraid to push it. I'm also a bit confused by the random foot here. I guess that's this creature's foot, but compositionally it's a bit of an odd choice. And next we have lighting. It looks like you did some shading here, so that's good, but don't forget about the highlights. Push it, dude. Also, this hand coming forward would be casting a shadow, so let's add that. I set my shadow layers mode to multiply. This more or less just makes it darker, but I'm sure someone will have a technological explanation in the comments. Also, the edge of a cast shadow is usually blurry. It depends how far away it is. The closer to the surface it's cast upon, the sharper it becomes. So we're going to use Clip Studio Paint's blend tool. Probably use the blur tool in Photoshop and get a similar effect, but I'm done with Adobe, so onto ambient occlusion. So luckily the weird foot placement actually helps us do some ambient occlusion because it's essentially the darkest part of the shadow. It's occluded by the ambient light in the scene. Marco Bucci has a phenomenal video on this that you and everyone watching should absolutely watch with a notebook. So I use a soft round brush with the shadow color, pushed up on the S and pushed down on the L in the HSL slider. Set the layer to multiply and I give it a generous Gaussian blur. This is just how I do it. It's not an exact science. Again, I'm not necessarily a pro. This is just some tips and advice based on how I do things. Then there's subsurface scattering. That's essentially the seemingly opaque surfaces that light pushes through, like the light from the sun going through your fingers when held together. So this guy's got a lot of fur, so we got a lot of areas. Hair is also a good example of subsurface scattering. So I go around with the soft round brush and set the layer mode to color dodge. Then I run it through a heavy Gaussian blur. Then I adjust the opacity to my liking. Then I go in with a low opacity soft round eraser and subdue the effects in areas I feel that it wouldn't be as strong. This one was a bit quick and dirty, but I think you get the idea I'm going for here. Okay, on to the last one you submitted, Tropic. This background is busy, and guess what it's missing? Yeah, you guessed it. Contrast. So I changed the background to this red color to complement the blue in the character's outfit. Looks a bit better, yeah? Also, the lighting is solid, but I like to do this thing that you can either take or leave. Okay, it's up to you. Sometimes I'll do a layer of white or near white sharp highlights with the hard round brush set to overlay mode for the areas that would be brightest, like the tip of the blade. This effect also looks nice on something like this guy's abs, or if you're drawing women, the breast or thighs. Why? I don't know. I just think it looks good. Also, I'm not a big fan of the outline with the mismatched line style. It's not so much the line weight, you know, the thickness and thinness of the lines. It's more the styles looking different. Again, this is a personal preference. You can apply it or disregard it, up to you. But I think it'll look much better with lines like this. So that's the 4 pieces from Tropic. Thank you very much for sending them in, and thank you for subscribing to the channel. Your key pain points I'd recommend you to work on are contrast and lighting, which kind of go hand in hand. I'd recommend Color and Light by James Gurney for further study, but it's good stuff nonetheless. Keep it up. Okay, so next up we got 2 from Pafonix. Okay, we got this panel from their comic, Star Angel. By the way, guys, I will start doing viewer-submitted comic reviews when we hit 5K subs. Meaning comics by you, not weird stuff you found. Okay? Anyway, so the first thing I noticed about this panel is the arms could use those little lines to indicate where they bend. Right? Like that. Next was the background. The background has a rushed feel. I get the idea that we're in a forest somewhere, but you could have taken some more time and care with it. I mean, it's understandable if you have some kind of deadline, which is why I don't give myself deadlines for Doomsayer, which I've been doing since 2021, but it's only 15 chapters long. Takes time, man. Those manga guys all have assistants. Well, most of them, anyway. Anyway, the trees need more definition, and some of them are somewhat random. Remember, every panel in a comic is similar to a shot in a movie. I'd recommend looking into cinematography to improve the composition. So I expanded some of these trees into each other so they wouldn't feel like claustrophobically close skinny boys and turned them into big summer bitches, you know? I also noticed this white outline on the character, and I get that's a quick and easy technique to watch your backgrounds, line work, and make your character stand out, but personally I don't like the look. That's just a personal preference. There's also some minimal cross-hatching on the character, which I feel like it could have pushed a bit more. Your black and white manga drawing style is kind of similar to mine, but I'm gonna give you a piece of advice that a teacher gave me once. Just draw the shit out of things. Yeah, that's what he said. But I think he meant just push it further, you know? Don't be a chicken shit about it. Like, no hesitation. It's like going to war. The created pieces are the slain enemies. Show no mercy. So in short, you just want to really go for it, but take your time, because the initial background was very half-assed. If you want to make it in the art world, there is no half-assery to be had. On to the next piece. The logo is fantastic, I'll give you that, but the composition is confusing as hell. I'm not sure if this creature is eating her or if her arms are transforming. I mean, I should love this piece. It's got creatures and goth girls, my two favorite things, but I'm at a bit of a loss here. The composition is hard to read. The red, in my opinion, should be way more saturated, and the texture or pattern you drew on it seemed unintentional. You can have a pattern on it and think it looks good if you take your time, you know? It looks kind of rushed here. And the two placement seems kind of random, and I'm not sure if they're going in or coming out of this portal thing. Also, I only noticed the cat after zooming in. I ended up cutting it out when I tried to tweak this piece. The colors are a bit muddied, so I tried to brighten them up a bit. Like I said earlier, contrast. They kind of blend together. It looks really tonal, you know, really flat. You know, if you were going for a monochromatic red, you could have done that, but this is, well, it's just confusing. I know you can draw, though, just from that one panel. You have all the pieces of a great cover here, they're just not arranged properly. I'd recommend looking into the rule of thirds and studying layouts. Akira Toriyama comes to mind when we're talking about composition. I think Kentaro Miura is also a good example of someone who has a crazy detailed style but is still able to make everything legible. But don't get demoralized, though. You have something here, so keep working at it. I added the tweaks I think would make this piece better, but the composition in the first place needs some work. Alright, so we're going to proceed to the next segment. Okay, next we got two from DoxiVerse, and damn, dude, these are great. Absolutely love the background on the first one. Shit, if I had money, I'd hire you to do backgrounds for Doomsayer. So, the only thing I'm a bit critical of here is the foreground at the bottom of the image. I couldn't tell until looking at the second piece that this was supposed to be her tail. Also, this, like, dark wave thing is kind of making it a bit harder to read, so I'd adjust that to make it clearer. Obviously, this is just kind of a quick and dirty paint over. You obviously can spend a ton of time with the rendering, but I got other pieces to get to, you know? But I hope this would give you the gist of what I'm suggesting here. Also, I thought this character had no arms at first, but it appears that her hand was on her stomach. So I'd move that just so the anatomy looks a bit more legible. You know, also maybe like define the sleeve a little bit more. So other than that, it's a stellar piece. Like, great work. As for the other one with the character designs, these are fantastic. Love them. I really like them, but the background is clashing. That sort of greenish teal is clashing with the green in the background. So I think you'd be better off making all of the background elements yellow, or better yet, just turning the entire background yellow to create more of a contrast with the green, which is an analogous color palette. Remember, dear viewers, always consult the color wheel when selecting your palette. And a bit of a drop shadow underneath them would set them firmly in place, in my opinion. This image kind of feels like a character design concept, so you can take it or leave it. But thanks for sending them in. I hope I could offer some help. So, on to the next one. Okay, so next we have some character designs from Atelier. I can't say that word. And these are awesome, dude. Love them. One thing I recommend is working in a higher resolution because these are a bit compressed. As for tips, shadow and light. Shadow and light. That seems to be the theme today. So, I like this ginger chick on the end here, so let's apply some shadow and light there. Once again, quick and dirty. Be more precise than me with your placement of the highlight and shadow shapes. The highlight layer is set to overlay, shadow layer is set to multiply. Adjust the opacity to your liking. Should also note that this mech guy here would be more reflective of light because metal is shiny. Usually, unless it's rusted, but this guy ain't rusted. So, yeah, the key tip for one of my favorite commenters, he leaves some long comments, but they're always a good read, is work in a higher resolution and don't neglect your light and shadow. Your design sensibilities are phenomenal, though. Keep it up. Okay, last but not least, we got one from Yggrdrasil. Hope I'm saying that right. So, we got some traditional art, but this digital paint over can be applied traditionally as well. So, first things first, contrast. Come on, guys, contrast. The background and this troll dude's apron are blending together. You can have a monochromatic palette, meaning only one color, that still maintains contrast though. So we'll go ahead and keep it in the red area just to show you what I mean. And once again, highlights and shadows, guys, don't neglect them. Sometimes stylistically, flat colors can look great, but depending on what you're going for, shadows and highlights are usually beneficial. Should also brighten up the border a bit. It needs a bit more saturation. To do this traditionally, you just got to add more ink, more or less. Although I'm not sure what supplies you use for this guy. Some of them might have like a muddy output. Depends. Your traditional supplies, usually if it's more expensive, it kind of is more good. I know that's not always the case. Some people can work with garbage supplies, but sometimes you're better off buying the expensive stuff. That's kind of why I only work digitally mostly now, because supplies are fucking expensive. Also, this pipe here is a perfect thing to add some dynamism to your art. So drawing some more smoke can really boost the visual appeal of your artwork depending how you place it. Also, there's this weird twig in the background that I figured I'd get rid of, this is just sort of again, a quick and dirty paint over. It's not really fully rendered. This is just sort of to give you the gist of it. So, if you do want to go back and tweak this piece, that's how I do it. But obviously take more time rendering it. So one more thing to note is that I think your style can really benefit from cross-hatching. So it'll give your work a more illustrative feel if that's what you're going for. A bit more time on your pieces with a bit more detail can probably push your art forward. I really do like the border design though. It's really cool. So just keep pushing yourself and you'll get there, dude. Anyway, guys, that's a wrap on the very first art roasting episode. I think I'm going to go ahead and limit them to 3 per episode so I can take more time with each piece moving forward. Also, I'll be able to make more content. So if you do want to submit art for the purpose of roasting, check out the Discord. I'll link in the description and the pinned comment. Submit them in the appropriate channel. You can also just hang out there and share some art just to share some as well, So I will see you guys next time. But before I go, I just want to say thank you for watching this video.